but fascinating stuff. I just want to mention that when I think of Frank at a Seth conference, I know that he sees this as a family reunion. I respect Frank's work immensely in this area because he is such a researcher into the Seth material. He looks up adjacent ideas and he blends them all together beautifully. And he loves the material. So he treats it with that kind of love and respect. And I don't think you can beat that combination. So I'll let Frank use his own time here. Frank Collins.
Thank you. Thank you. I normally don't start out. We're going to do things different this time around. In fact, there'll be nothing to take notes on this time at all. Jim, the way we'll work it with, do I have my remote? Okay.
There's something over in that far chair.
Some people just, yes?
Do you like the lights on or off?
It doesn't make any difference as long as they can see the board there. Okay.
I forgot to bet we should have tested it.
We should have tested it. Well, we'll test it as we go. Very seldom do I don't like to read things, especially something from a non-Seth book, but sometimes people say things so well. This is, pardon?
You want to turn the light off?
Okay, well, I need it to read. Sometimes people say things so well that I think we're just going to, and there's another quote in here this is from James Burke, The Day the Universe Changed. And what I hope to be showing today is something about how, we're at a point where, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. You are what you know. 15th century Europeans knew that the sky was made of closed, concentric crystal spheres, rotating around a central Earth and carrying the stars and planets. That knowledge structured everything they did and thought because it told them the truth. Then Galileo's telescope changed the truth. As a result, 100 years later, everybody knew that the universe was open and infinite, working like a giant clock. Architecture, music, literature, science, economics, art, politics, everything changed, mirroring the new view created by the change in knowledge. Today we live according to the latest version of how the universe functions. This view affects our behavior and our thought, just as previous versions affected those who lived with them. All right. Let's see what kind of a quote we've got up here. All right, I think we could probably kill this up here. I'd like everybody to be able to... I don't think so. We'll try it. We'll see. Can everybody see the board? Oh, now we can. Oh, that's perfect. That's a perfect combination. Oh. See, we each live in a different universe, don't we? Oh, very good. All right. Yes. Now, that's perfect for me. Almost. I got enough light here. All right. Thank you. So not only is the universe stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. Now, when I originally did this and pared everything down, I really came up with about a 72-hour talk that I pared down to about 2 hours, and I knew I had to cut it down. Now, this is going to be about subjectivity and the role of subjectivity in the change of how I believe we're looking at some of the future changes that are happening. But the first half hour, which is going to be a half hour because we're going to pare it down right now, and I'll show you how we're going to do this. Could everybody raise their hand? Now make it comfortable. Just raise your hand so you can hold it up for a good minute and a half. Not that high. Just kind of support it. Hold a finger up or something. I don't care. All right. Can I see a show of hands of everyone who understands the role of vitalism and spirituality over the last 1,500 years, let's say 2,000 years in Western culture? You're not following directions. All right, hold your hands up. We need to get through this stuff so I can get on with the talk. All right. Does everyone understand the role of how spirituality was the way that we defined reality over the last few thousand years up until the Middle Ages. The church, the various religions, essentially in Western culture, the Catholic Church, right? We know about the Council of Nicaea, we know about Irenaeus, we've talked about all this stuff before. All of those things, we know that, okay. That's a good 20 minutes of the talk gone right there. All right. We all understand the difference between vitalism and materialism, right? Vitalism, there's more to the whole. There's a spirit behind reality. Basically, mechanistic view means that we're looking at tinier and tinier pieces, and that's all there is look at what's tinier and tinier. There is no overall structure to things, no overall spiritual quality, we could call it. All right. Need to look at my notes here. Well, we talked about that. We covered that. Everyone here understands. Everyone here understands the role that the Catholic Church played in basically influencing how we saw the world. Our reality check, up until probably 1700, was the Bible, wasn't it? Or some such religious text. You don't have to hold your hands. I see you still have your hands. No. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page up to that point, because that cuts out a lot of time. All right. Somewhere around the Middle Ages, we had the Reformation, didn't we? We had Galileo, we had Martin Luther, right? We had all kinds of things taking place that allowed for changes. Those changes allowed for an emerging new way of seeing the world, right? Well, Seth tells us that we have inner codes. And those inner codes, when they're contained within a framework, and we all have to have a framework to view reality, to experience reality, to create. When that framework becomes too restrictive, too limited, a change will occur. Mass consciousness will reach a point where it changes the structure. And that change that took place during the Reformation was a couple hundred years. Some of the names I wrote, Bruno, remember we talked about Bruno a couple years ago and the changes he brought and what happened to him. Martin Luther, I think, was the main one. But Gutenberg introduced the printing press. Gutenberg allowed for a little widespread information. Knowledge was no longer contained just in the churches. All right. When the new science emerged, the reality check, instead of being the Bible or a religious text or the priest, the reality check, am I in tune with what life's purpose is, questions were answered by the structure that became the new church, which is science. It became objectivity, became the new reality check. Can someone else view this? If I'm looking at this, can you see the same thing? Can we reproduce an experiment? So observation, objectivity, and what emerged as the scientific process became the new reality check. It became the method by which a framework was established, and we all understand that that framework emerged into what we now call our version in Western society of science. And I'm not talking about gadgeteering, I'm not talking about applied science, I'm talking about pure science. And we know around the 19th century that science had explained everything in Newtonian, basic Newtonian concepts. In fact, that worked very well with the world as we were creating it, because the world seemed to be made of objects and we were studying objects. And around the 19th century, we ran into a couple of problems, but they were minor problems that we were sure would clear up as soon as we had little better instruments. And those problems related to light, the duality of light, related to what light was supposed to be. Everyone was looking for, what does light travel through? What is the ether? What's out there? But they were sure that within Newtonian science, they could just tweak their findings enough to explain some of these odd findings. And we know what happened with Curie and de Broglie and how they discovered waves, and we know about Maxwell's equations, and Einstein was sort of the tail end of this, where he said, well, maybe things are relative. Maybe it's not hard billiard ball reality. And of course, the beginning of the quantum age occurred in that period of 1910 to 1920. We tend to think of, at least I do, of the Copenhagen conference as the beginning of the quantum age, where we started talking about a reality that has Hilbert space and all the things that we learn about in the Seth material. All right. Well, how do we know? I need to look at my notes here so I can get back on with this. One of the problems, and Jane talks about this, one of the problems that we have when we have a framework within which to view reality is that we sometimes mistake the picture that emerges from our explanation as the reality, as the truth. And we're aware of that. That's why we look at the Seth material. That's why we study the Seth material. In my terms, we get dazzled by the bullshit. We create a form, we create a structure, we create the structure as we examine it. That is the measurement problem. And then we get dazzled by the fact that we were right. We were right. And so we get ever more complex. I'm going to get into this in a moment here, too, about the Seth material and how we get ever more complex in how we explain things that are basically explained simply. But how do we know when a system has outlived the ability to allow for value fulfillment? Are we all on the same page with the simple explanation of value fulfillment? I'm not going to define these terms because this is really a subjective experience, and it's going to get very subjective in the last half. But value fulfillment roughly equates, Seth tells us, for one thing, it's what drives the universe, but it roughly equivalates with what we call in framework one growth. So a child growing up to an adult is experiencing the physical equivalent in loose terms of what value fulfillment is. Value fulfillment involves an ever-expanding awareness, conscious creation, or ever-expanding awareness and creation. Let's put it that way. How do we know when a system or a framework has outlived its ability to allow for value fulfillment? And that's where we're at, I think, today with, and many of us would agree, with the new religion of science. And is this going to work? And this is not working. Oh, there you go. Was that you?
That was you.
That was me. Okay. We never know. Entanglement. All right, here we go. This is in the 19th century, we had a couple of things that couldn't be explained by Newtonian framework. Light and some of the weird properties of wave and particle duality. Well, now we've got a whole bunch of them. Here's just 13 things, and this is a couple of years old. The placebo effect, which is fascinating. Every one of these are fascinating and are unexplainable within the framework of our version of science in the Western Hemisphere at this moment. Western Hemisphere science is the basic religion. Everybody on page with that? At least you may not agree with it, but you understand what I'm talking about. When Johnny comes running in, Johnny's 5 years old, he comes running in and he says, "Mommy, I'm being chased by a dragon." Well, we don't go load a gun or something. We kind of pause and we use our science to tell us, well, dragons probably aren't alive right now, and Johnny's probably imagining it, and imagination is, it's not real, so maybe Johnny's just play acting. That's our automatic response, and we do that throughout every aspect of our life. If it's mental, if it's emotional, if it's imaginary, it's not real. That is our model. It is our model. And it's a direct outgrowth of how we chose to experience creativity in the physical realm through the framework of science. 600, 700, 800 years ago, we might have thought there was a real dragon, and we would have had a spiritual interpretation, perhaps. The devil has formed itself in the yard. Let's call the priest, or some such version. Again, it shapes. The religion of the time shapes our thinking. Well, within the religion of the time, science, these things are presenting us with evidence that the framework no longer holds or can contain the limits of our creativity.
Sorry, could you read this up to the lines there? I can't see because it's so...
There's nothing here important on the thing. It says 13 things. I'm sorry, 13 things that do not make sense. Is that what you mean?
Below that, 2 lines below that.
Okay, placebo effect, tetraneutrons, the horizon problem, the pioneer anomaly. All of these are fascinating.
On the other side, on the top.
We can't read the part with the light blue.
Okay, yeah, horizon problem, pioneer anomaly, ultra energetic cosmic rays. In fact, someone was talking about that the other day. Dark energy, the Belfast homeopathic results, which are fascinating. The wow signal, everybody's heard about the wow. So if you watch the Discovery Channel or History Channel, you've heard about the wow signal. Dark matter, not so constant constants, cold fusion, which is coming up again. Vikings methane, that's about evidence of life on Mars. So these are things that aren't explainable in today's framework. So it's a way, and of course I think everybody here really understands that the universe that's being discovered is simply our physical version of a metaphor for our consciousness as it expands. When the Hubble telescope went up, we suddenly found that some of the little dots that everyone knew were stars were galaxies with billions of stars. So there was just this phenomenal explosion. Now we know that the universe is expanding, but we can't explain the expansion. In fact, it's not even up there, I don't think, but the heat, the evenness of the heat distribution. So anyway, if we were to go back, and I guess I can't go backwards here, but the other statement, that's okay. The statement said the world's, well, you know the world's strange. And it's stranger than we can imagine. All right, let me look at my notes here so I have some clue. All right, no longer can be explained. 19th century, we'll talk to electromagnetism. All right, a new framework is in the process of emerging. The modern, this is a statement that I could go on forever, and I'm not going to. I've got to cut this out to get to the rest of this. The modern Inquisition, you know, when the church was in its death throes, they had the Inquisition. They felt the loss of power. So everybody here is familiar with the Inquisition and what took place. Okay, well, we're in the middle of our version of the Inquisition in science. The modern Inquisition is and has been in full swing. Objective science explaining away personal experience, discounting it at every turn. And I've got to mention here, and I see the books over here too, excellent book, James' book, Ghost Hunters, and William James and the Ghost Hunter by Deborah Bloom, talks about the attacks of science on anything into the spiritual or supernatural. We've heard talks here today about introducing into mainstream science the beginnings of a new parameter. And of course, this is a process. This isn't going to happen tomorrow at 2 o'clock. This is a process, may go well past our physical existence on this planet. I'm going to go to the next one, and again, this is some, okay. Let's go to the next. I actually have some quotes from James Burke again because he just does a great job. Do you want me to read this? Yes and no. Okay, I'll read every other word. At every level of its operation, from the cosmos to the laboratory bench, the structure, meaning science, controls observation and investigation. Each stage of research is carried out in response to a prediction based on a hypothesis about what the result will be. Let's go to the next one here. Back up 2 more. I think 1 more. Failure to obtain that result. I thought this was fascinating. Failure to obtain that result is usually dismissed as experiment failure. Remember what Seth said? You'd be better off studying the healthy exceptions rather than the diseased. Okay, but anyway, every attempt is made to accommodate anomalies by a minor adjustment to the mechanism of the structure, tweaking science. As was the case with Ptolemy's epicycles. You know how God made perfect circles, and they couldn't explain, as they got more refined telescopes, they couldn't explain the elliptical orbits, so they kept adding circles because the theory was that God would only make a circle. So we do the same thing today. We do exactly the same thing today. We tweak science. Look at drug research. My God, I could go on with this one. Look at what they do, how many people they eliminate from the study because they're not within the norm. That's just one aspect of it. But anyway, in this way, the structure remains essentially intact, as it must do if there is to be a continuity. Careers, lives, incomes are on the balance, and balance in the investigation of nature. The next slide, please. Science, therefore, I think that's the last one. Let's go back. As has been seen, however, the structure contains within it This too is fascinating. The structure contains within it systems which operate at every level to lead the investigator to the most detailed of analysis. Especially today, we have fascinating instruments. Fascinating, looking for little particles. Dr. Brown was talking about the higher MeV volt, the cyclotron in Chicago, outside of Chicago, Fermi. Was that Fermi? Yes, what was it, 103 MeV volts for the latest subatomic particle or something, was that right?
They have 1 trillion electron volt. These positrons colliding with 1 trillion
1 trillion
electron volts.
electron volts. Much greater than we could have done with batteries back in 1890. Thank you. And it is often at that level that anomalies occur. This is what I call the edge of physicality, where, and every age has this, where we are just at the edge of what we know to be true. Anomalies occur which cannot be accommodated without a complete change in the contemporary structure. We reach a point where tweaking doesn't work. Now I'm going to tell you what happens at that point. I'm going to try and tell you what Seth says, put it in my words. Basically, the inner codes, which are there, they're part of our heritage. They are part of what we were given at the Big Bang, or whatever you want to call it. They contain the inner information that is ancient wisdom. It's essentially the Seth material in coded form, we could say, in biological form, in emotional, mental form. That information is there. It emerges within the mass consciousness to bring about change in the structure, because the structure can no longer contain experience. Let's go to the last statement here. Science, therefore, for all the reasons above, is not what it appears to be. And this is not an attack on science. This is an attack on Western technological versions of science. It is not objective and impartial, since every observation it makes of nature is impregnated with theory. We look at what we create. You know, Seth, we did that whole thing about the inner and the outer ego, how that outer ego of the 5 senses, the core of the focused personality in physicality, is the outer ego. It communicates to the inner ego, which tells the higher self what to create, and that feedback process continues. That's the idea behind is impregnated with theory. The structure is institutionalized and given permanence by the educational system. The unknown can only be examined by first being defined in terms of the structure. In other words, you can only look at something within the experiments set up by a structure that's already limited. Everybody on the page with that? That makes sense? All right. I've got a couple of other things here. You need a framework to explain experience. That's true. We need a framework. We're not going to get away from a framework. We need frameworks. Again, I think the key is to not be dazzled by the bullshit. Don't be dazzled by the framework. All right, next comment here is mass consciousness has reached a point where this physical framework will not allow for the growth and evolution of the race. One of the ways this is being expressed, just one way this is being expressed, is through more personal, subjective experiences that cannot be contained in the official view. What I would just call synchronicities, what you may call as psychic experiences, whatever. The emergence of mass communication, the internet, is just one more way that an expression of the inner quality of psychic connectedness allows for a further breakdown of our limited view of reality. 100 years ago, 50 years ago, we didn't have anything even approaching the internet. We didn't have the ability to share my weird experience with your weird experience, so we can both, as part of the mass consciousness, where we could both say, you know what? Things aren't the way they seem. The world is unusual. This is just happening at an exponential rate, to just overuse a phrase. Mass communication of unusual phenomena at least is now available. Again, one tool. Subjectivity, personal experience, sometimes sensitive and so traditionally kept private from strangers, is now available to the masses. A different view of reality, one that includes the input of subjectivity is now able to emerge and be viewed by millions. Now here's a point. I tried switching that and it didn't work. Can we go to the next one, please? All right, the importance of the Seth material. And this is a statement by Feynman. Everybody remember Feynman? Okay. If we want to solve a problem that we have never solved before, we must leave the door to the unknown ajar. Now I've got a key up there, and I've got an unusual, isn't that a neat key? All right. Seth, I want you to listen to this statement, even if you've been sleeping or daydreaming or whatever. This one, I think this is kind of a key to where we're going to be going with this, and I really do think it's important. Seth makes available a method to see through the web of structure. It's the Seth material, that information, whether it's contained in the Seth books or whether you got it from a dream or whatever, but the view of Seth as an expression of universal understanding of the inner codes. For one thing, it's the most, as far as I know, the most undistorted version of it with the least amount of nonsense added to it. It makes available. What does makes available mean? It means like you can't study biology 2 before you've had 1, you know? You have to have a foundation. Well, your foundation in physical reality, at least as far as understanding goes, we're talking about to be able to understand. If you don't want to understand, there's nothing wrong with that. Learning takes place, everything else takes place. But being a part of conscious co-creation requires kindergarten level understanding, and that is the Seth material. It's not reading a book. It's not reading 5 books. It's not incorporating Seth into whatever it is you're doing, learning a new technique, learning how to tweak things. Because all of those techniques, all of those procedures, everything you learn works because you're creating it as you go. So they work. But to be able to see through the web of the creative process, the Seth material is available. Anybody ever try to do something where the tool to do it was available in the drawer and you just refused to do it? You know, like open a jar or something like that? Am I the only one that does that? You know, try to use, you know what a spline wrench is? I tried to use a spline wrench to open I can't. Anyway, someone has to come along sometimes and just say, hey, listen, you know, the tool for that is, oh, leave me alone, I can do it this way, you know. And then you suddenly use that tool and you accomplish the task so much easier. That's the idea. The Seth material, it makes it available to understand the web of our creative process, of the structures that we create. You don't have to use it. You can be dazzled by the bullshit. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're looking for understanding, the Seth material is ground level basic over and over again. It opens up the frameworks to see their origins within ourselves and to see ourselves as the co-creators of all aspects of our physical experience. It allows us to see our own private universe as a direct reflection of our total self, being expressed in one medium, physicality. All right, just so we're all on the same page, everybody keep their hands down for the next 12 seconds. Are there any questions? Good. All right. Value fulfillment is the common drive behind consciousness. Expansion of expression is the mechanism used. Expansion of expression is the mechanism used for value fulfillment. The physical universe, its perception and resultant creation, that feedback system, by our observation, the physical universe, its perception and resultant creation by our observation is constantly evolving as we evolve as conscious creators. The laws that govern this process are not measurable by the tools contained within this physical system. That includes the mental tools that reflect the limits of physicality. When we start talking about logic, that includes such things as time. When we talk about using language that's based on a time-space linearity, those tools do not work. A new model of reality, one that reflects respect for subjectivity, the magnetic-like quality of focused intent, the power of emotion, and the supreme importance of the present moment is emerging. One more time. A new model of reality, one that reflects respect for subjectivity, the magnetic-like quality of focused intent, the power of emotion, and the supreme importance of the present moment is emerging. As this model is incorporated into society, like I can see the future. Okay, this is what I believe. As this model is incorporated into society, the importance of seeing problems as challenges in need of creativity, the importance of seeing problems as challenges in need of creativity will take hold. The non-local reservoir of probabilities and framework too will be respected. The knowledge that this reservoir is of good intent, as are we, will be realized. Let's go to the next slide here. Thank you. You, dear reader, are in the process of expanding your psychic structure, of becoming a conscious participator with the soul, in certain terms, of becoming what your soul is. As cells multiply and grow within their own nature and the physical framework, so do selves evolve in terms of value fulfillment. A major shift will occur where everyone realizes the interconnectedness of it all. It will be expressed by the general understanding that by solving each individual's own problems in the best possible manner and in the most fulfilling way is the method that is the most rewarding for all of society. How do I solve the polluted stream problem? Now, I don't have the exact design for this, and I'm not offering a technique of any type. I'm trying to provide a general model of what I believe we're evolving into, with a respect for a new framework of understanding within which the new check marks for reality will not be whether we agree with a Bible or a biblical statement or whether or not it's objectively able to be measured by someone else, but the new check marks for reality will be, am I in tune? In fact, I've got that down here. Why don't I just read it? Yeah, it's right there. That was thoughtful, Opie. The new benchmark for a reality check will be to see if you are in tune with your purpose, enjoying your life, and consciously aware of your connectedness. Problem solving in society, whether we're talking about war, pollution, whatever, problem solving in society will be by each person having a personal vision, each person that it affects, I should have added, having a personal vision of the best possible outcome. Emotionally identifying with that vision and taking practical steps in the present moment that reflect a trust in the power of the universe to bring that vision into reality. Problem solving will no longer be, it's out there, let's put technology on it, let's make it happen. Look, we tried to, I could give you a billion examples, so could you. We tried to solve the problem. Well, we're doing it, aren't we? We're trying to solve the problem of children with learning disabilities. We've added tremendous income to the educational system to solve this problem. Have learning disability problems, what have they done? Have we eradicated that yet?
Increasing.
How much are they increasing? Yeah, there you go. Sure. They're going up. Why is that happening? Yeah, focus. Focused intent, emotion, and energy. What's our energy? Western society, it's money. That's all. That's a simple explanation. Energy in Western society equates to money. That's not 100% true, but that's a basic concept. We put our effort, energy into the problem. We attack it. It's out there. Attack it with our methodology. That paradigm can't be tweaked anymore. We have a lot of really we have a tremendous wellspring of well-intentioned people working within structures that are inherently pathological. We have wonderful doctors who work for HMOs and treat their patients like cattle. We have wonderful teachers. You think a person gets out of high school and decides to go to college and they want to teach because they hate kids and they want to make the world a worse place and they want to fill out paperwork? We have all kinds of structures within which we are narrowing the focus. You don't need to be told this. You can now freely raise or not raise your hand. Is there anybody here that doesn't understand what I'm talking about? I saw a hand go up. That's got to be, who's that? Oh, that's bullshit. All right. Scientists will be as aligned with art. Scientists will be as aligned with art, psychology, and play as our present scientists are with instruments, logic, and discipline. And of course, Dream Bob talks about dream, and someone else, I forget, but talked about dream art scientists. Obviously, that's what we're talking about. That type of evolving, that's science with a capital S. Our challenge is to see through the web of our own deceptive creativity and to free ourselves of the dazzle in the frame. We get dazzled by bullshit. We even do it at, so how many people do you know have read a book or two of the Seth material and they know what it is, and then they incorporate it into their system, their technique, or whatever? I don't know. It just, I know there are steps, practical steps that go well past my lifetime that are going to need to be taken, and all of these things represent valuable, workable systems for, and I'm in those too, valuable, workable systems that serve us at the moment where we are, and as long as they're moving in a direction, you know what, that's fine. And I'll let it drop at that. How much time do I have left?
35.
That's it? Oh, shit. How do we harness the power of emotion directed through the focus of clear intent that reflects the highest level of value fulfillment at the moment? I'll repeat that one. How do we harness the power of emotion directed through the focus of clear intent that reflects the highest level of value fulfillment at the moment? I haven't a clue, but I do have it says here I've got 40 minutes. I'm sorry, you're wrong. I do have 40 minutes and two 20-minute stories that show how our subjective personal interests, focuses, beliefs, and emotions seamlessly. You want to know how you create? It's seamless. It's seamless. It's who we are does the creating. It's not some technique. It's not what I'm going to meditate. I'm going to tweak this, I'm going to bend that way, I'm going to chant, I'm going to light a candle, fart in a jar, and I'm going to bring about a new reality. I don't care. You can light the fart and put the candle in the jar. It doesn't make any difference. The way you create is seamlessly from who you are as a person, and that's what I hope to show. It's a subjective, instantaneous, continuously feedback system of creativity. I think this is the start of the bridging of a gap to the next phase of evolutionary change in consciousness. As we each share with others the stories of connections in our own lives, the more the official picture of reality, the objective, separate by design, survival by defiance, winners and losers, good versus bad, nature is indifferent, life as accident picture will dissipate. All right, any questions? No, good. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Everybody here understood that. The universe leans in your direction. Our greatest gift is also our greatest challenge to understanding the nature of reality. That was going to be the opening part of a really neat discussion about that. The problem is CUs create every camouflage unit we get into. You all know that if you don't study it. Next slide. More reading. Inner codes of reality appear within the molecules on the one hand and within the private and mass psyche as well. This is inner codes. This is good stuff. The material in these inner codes is always translated outward into the world of science, religion, politics, and law. But if these outer manifestations become too rigid or petrify, I love that word, or if their inner source is forgotten, that's what I mean by dazzled by bullshit, then they no longer serve the needs of the individual or mass psyche. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, starting at the beginning. Okay, next slide. All right, this is my passion in life. I'm a ham operator. You're going to learn a little bit about my subjective life over the next couple of minutes because it's going to make the two stories I'm going to tell. You know, Seth tells us we can inject our creativity into time and we call it an event. We can inject our creativity into space and we call it an object. We do so either involving multiple other people or sometimes fewer people. Well, I'm going to try to give two stories to give I think a beautiful example. Neither one of these stories are, wow, guess what he did. Neither one of them are that. They're what everybody in the world does all day long. My purpose in telling you is to sort of open up an avenue to understanding that doesn't involve technique, procedure, science. It's a new subjective view of how reality is formed. So try to follow with me. There's a lot of skipping over a lot of stuff. If we're talking about subjective experience, there's a billion intents going through each one of us at any given moment. There's fears, there's worries, there's anxieties, there's hopes, there's desires. All of these things mix and match emotionally to create the collapse of the waveform of, as we interpret it, collapse of the waveform of each particular particle that leads to the creation of events and objects. So this is my passion. This is what I spend all my time, spare time doing when I'm not reading Seth. I'm a ham operator. Part and parcel of the understanding of this that I want you to understand for the next couple of stories is that I spend all of my time, and have for the last 45 years, looking at the 70-foot level for antennas. Just so happens that the type of radio that I do involves antennas that are mounted at 70 feet, typically a 70 to 80-foot tower, and they're about 20 to 30 feet across. The other thing I want you to notice in the picture is the walls are beige. Beige is my favorite color. There's a reason for that. Okay, let's go to the next one. What I do is Morse code. That's what I do in radio. I'm a ham operator. I work virtually 100% Morse code. A couple of keys. Notice they're beige. Okay, let's go to the next picture. Antennas. That one's mine. Now these are scrub trees. I'm going to talk to you about them for the next story. But that's an antenna. That's about 70 feet. The top of it up there is about 75 feet. That's one of the antennas in my backyard. Let's just go through the next pictures here fairly quickly. I think they're all antennas. Just Carol and I taking pictures. There's somebody else's house. Again, same thing, towers, antennas. I spend all my time traveling looking for antennas when we're on the road. Another antenna set up. Next one. More towers, antennas. More towers, more antennas. That whole tower rotates. Okay, here we are. Stop here. Illusions, my favorite book. One of my favorite books. All right, we're going to show some connections here. So we know about ham radio. Illusions has always fascinated me. Everybody here has read Illusions. If you haven't, read it. It's a story about how probabilities connect, synchronicities, and so on. Okay, about the nature of reality being an illusion. Let's go to the next picture. Not everyone has read that book, Nothing by Chance. Nothing by Chance. I'm talking fast so we can get through this because I've got a really neat other part to this. Nothing by Chance is the story that led to illusions. And this story, I looked for my copy. This is not my copy. We took that off the internet. I can't find my copy. I had 5 houses, which I've sold over the last 3 houses and 2 properties that I've sold. So you can imagine all this crap I've collected over the years. Now, I don't consider my books crap, but I've got so many books, so I had to rent a huge warehouse where we store this because Carol and my house won't hold this stuff. I can't find my copy. I would have sworn I'd have brought it, but I didn't. So anyway, I wanted to show you a picture from it, but it's the story that led to illusions, and it's a story of barnstorming in the 60s in my neighborhood where I live now in Wisconsin. And the story, it's been 20 years since I read it. I want to reread it for this, but as I recall, it starts out with him crash landing in Palmyra. Has anybody read it? Is that right? Okay. And he breaks this. You know what barnstorming is? Selling rides, right? And he crash lands in Palmyra and he breaks a spar on this 1920s biplane that's rare as hell. He figures, I think that he said there's 4 of them in the world. So he breaks this irreplaceable spar in Palmyra, Wisconsin, and he's devastated. It's expensive. He doesn't have a lot of money. He doesn't know what to do. Let's go to the next slide. Well, this is Palmyra. That's about the oldest building I could find was the one back there. That's Palmyra Airport. He talks to some guy there, and the guy said, why don't you check out back? We got a bunch of old airplane parts. Well, I'm not going to find the spar. There's like 4 of them in the world, you know. And he goes, and of course, what does he do? He finds the spar, right? So it's always held kind of a special place. This is about 40 miles from my home. Let's go to the next slide. Again, that's just another picture of Palmyra Airport. Okay, well, all right, we went to this. All right, leave that up. All right. This is going back about 20-something years ago. A friend of mine, Terry, moved out of town, a ham radio operator. I can't see where I'm at in the notes here. Yeah. Anyway, Terry moves out of town, ham operator, putting up an antenna, needed a tuner. I had this old tuner sitting around. And this is not the company is Dentron. It's not a rare, the company made a number of tuners. This is a relatively rare, unpopular one because it has no extra features. A tuner allows you to match the impedance from the antenna to the radio and so on. But he needed a tuner. I gave him this one. I didn't care about it. It was one I'd had laying around for years. Fine. Shoot forward another 12 years. 10, 12 years. Terry's back in Wisconsin up near Milwaukee, and he says, why don't we have lunch? Okay, fine, great. We talk on the phone every so often. So I drive out to Milwaukee. We meet for lunch. And he says, I got a surprise for you, and he gives me the tuner. I said, great, thank you. I'd forgotten completely about it. I have no use for it, but that's fine. I throw it in the back of my car. Now, there's a number of ways I can drive home. Joe, how many ways can I drive home from Milwaukee, other than 43, which is what I took to get there? 5, 10, something, who knows? One of the roads goes through Palmyra. Now, I had not been through Palmyra in probably 3-4 years. I didn't know which roads I was going to take. I have no idea. I think ES and Beloit Road come out of there, whatever. I'm just taking roads. If I go from Milwaukee and drive southwest, I'm going to wind up at home eventually. So, beautiful Saturday. I'm just driving. Next slide, please. So I managed to get through Palmyra. Now, in the book, Nothing by Chance, there's a picture of this building with Richard Bach walking out of the wall. Or walking out of the wall. Yeah, walking out of the wall. Interesting slip. Walking out of the door. I guess that was a restaurant back in the 60s. Well, now I'm driving by, and what do I see? What is that? Ham antenna, sure. And what else was on that building? 4 hams working on the antenna. So I pull over. This is very common. I pull over to the side, park, and I go around back, climb up the ladder, and I start talking to guys on the roof. Hi, how you doing? I introduce myself. What are you doing? Well, and the fella, and I don't know his name anymore, but the ham that lived there was disabled. So he wasn't up there. He was downstairs. He was having antenna trouble. He was having some problems with his radio. And these were some local hams giving him a hand. So I asked him what's going on. Well, he's having antenna trouble. And we've isolated it's not the radio, and we're pretty sure it's not the antenna, but he's using a tuner, and he wants to replace it with the exact tuner. And of course, there's all kinds of manufacturers, all kinds of tuners. Now, I tried to think about this today, because this is many years ago. I tried to think about it. I think I had forgotten at that moment that I had a tuner in the back of my car, because it was a nice drive. It was probably 2 hours after I left from Terry's. Well, I said, well, geez, I'd kind of like to see it. I think I then remembered. I said, oh, I'd like to see it. Well, there's no sense in bothering him. You know, he's downstairs. We could take you down there, but you got to climb down and go in. I said, well, I'd like to see it. Okay, well, come on down. So we all go downstairs, and hi, I introduce myself and all that. He says, yeah, he says, I've been having problems, and I can't tell if it was the antenna. That's why they were checking that out. I couldn't tell if it was a radio. We checked that out. He said, the only thing left is a tuner, but I don't want to substitute any tuner. I want to substitute this, and these guys are just saying, well, I've never even seen. One guy said, I've never seen one like that. The other guy said, I think I saw one once, but none of them had any idea how to go. So I played it for everything it's worth. I said, well, I'll get mine. And the guy said, well, I thought you're from Beloit. That's going to be 80 miles up and back. I said, no, I got in the car. Well, everybody in the room thought I was BSing them, didn't they? Well, wouldn't you? You know, he just stopped by for a minute, said hi, and he's on his way out, and he's just pulling our leg. So I walk downstairs. I come up with the exact same tuner. Okay, now there's nothing remarkable about tuners, hams, or antennas, or the fact that it was in Palmyra in the same building that Richard Bach walked out of in the book where he's talking about coincidences. That's not exactly remarkable, it's not earth-shattering, and it doesn't mean anything to anybody but me. Do you see how all the probabilities of all of the energies, of all of the people, Terry had to borrow my tuner 12 years earlier. He had to pick that beautiful day for me to just meet him up in Milwaukee. He had to think. I never asked for the tuner back. I had completely forgotten about it the moment I gave it to him. He had to think to give it, and we had seen each other several times since then. He had to think to give it back to me that day. I had to choose to drive back on the back roads, one of which happens to go through. There are many ways to go back to Beloit, not through Palmyra. I didn't choose this intentionally. I had no idea there was a ham there. Hadn't seen that building in probably 5 years, 3 years, I don't know. Can you think of all of the energies? Now, here's the point. There's a point to this. What was taking place? My interpretation is my higher self was just tweaking me a little bit to say there's more to Now, I know that, but it was a way of putting it inside, wasn't it? There's more to reality, Frank. Remember that. There's a connectedness. Remember that. Now, I wasn't in a particularly bad place in my life or anything at the time. I didn't need the message. But isn't that a nice message? Okay? No questions because we don't have time. Let's go to the next one. Okay, this is all Terry stuff. Da, 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 da. That's Terry. What's this? Oh, I'm sorry. Same building. Next one, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. That's me, and we couldn't figure out what this picture was. Either I'm describing some otherworldly propulsion system, or I'm messing with the world of exploration experiences of a small crawling insect, or I'm seeing if the coffee stays put when you turn the saucer upside down. I don't know, but anyway, it leads into the next one. I have no idea when that picture was taken. Carol couldn't remember either what I was doing or talking about. Let's go to the next one. All right, that's our house. Oh, remember yesterday I was talking about the picture when I didn't put this up for that reason. It's not a house story, but remember I was saying about the picture when we couldn't agree and I didn't want any glass at ground level? Look at that thing. The ground drops away. Who'd have thought? I never thought of that. All right, I'm showing you this because I want you to see what trees look like in Wisconsin in summer and winter because the next story is going to involve trees briefly. Let's go to the next one. All right, trees in winter, you can see they're definitely losing their leaves. Now, this may seem ridiculously simple to many people, but if you haven't been in the north, you don't know what snow is, you don't know the trees lose their leaves. Okay, I think next to our backyard. Okay, here's the exact two scenes. I took these for a reason. This is looking out from, actually this is looking from another picture window. This is looking straight out back into our backyard. These are what are called scrub trees. They grow to 40 feet. I know my heights, that's 40 feet. Those are scrub trees. I don't know if there's another name for them. I call them scrub. This is summer. This is what leaves look like in summer. Let's go to the next picture. Exact same scene, little slightly different angle, but that's the same trees, 40 feet. Actually, you can see a couple of my towers. One tower is back there, and the other one's back in here somewhere. But these are scrub trees. You see how you can look right through them. It's the exact same scene. Okay, next, please. This is an artist rendition. Okay, let me talk about UFOs for a minute here. I spent a lot of time interested in UFOs. It goes back to a whole bunch of stuff for years, and we're not going to cover it. But I'm going to talk about just a couple of aspects of UFOs from the subjective standpoint. For me only, when I'm reading about, hearing about a UFO experience, my internal mechanism kind of jumps up with a little skepticism. Attitudes, I've got it down as attitudes about credibility, things that make me go, Doesn't mean I disbelieve the story, doesn't mean I discount the subjective experience of someone else. But as far as it being a framework one experience, I kind of go, Attitudes about credibility, landing lights, landing gear, aerodynamic shape, antennas, windows, noises, propulsion paraphernalia, whatever. Strange weather, another thing that questions a sighting for me. Unfamiliar area with unusual physical surroundings. Now, for me to see a UFO, again, now my subjective requirements, if I were to ever see a UFO, ever, although I had never specified this, I'm going to tell you what my requirements would be for me to be able to say in framework one, Absolutely, court of law. I saw something that cannot be explained. What would I need? I would have to be able to see it from a minimum of 2 perspectives. Am I running out of time, Nance?
No, your mic gets weird.
I'll let you fix it.
Sorry.
Oh, no. So no one got my blonde joke earlier?
No, because they didn't hear it.
No. Okay.
I'm not sure what's wrong with this.
You want me to hold it?
Sorry.
How can that conversation be taken?
Sorry. Oh. Sorry. No, let me give you this. Sorry.
Can you hear me on this one? Okay. But am I still being recorded?
Go.
Okay.
Talk fast.
Okay, I'm going to talk fast. For me, for it to be real, for me to say in a court of law I saw something, I'd have to see it from, because of my eyes, I do not have stereoscopic vision, I have to see it from 2 or more perspectives. It would have to hold still. It would have to be a daylight sighting. I couldn't see something far away and swear it was an odd thing, a UFO or whatever. It would have to be in clear weather. It would have to be close, and I mean close, with references. I can't look up because of lack of stereoscopic vision. I can't see something in the sky without a reference and tell you what it is. I'd have to be wide awake and alert, and I'm always sober, so that's not an issue. All right, scary stuff. I wouldn't have thought about this except that if you were to ask me what don't you want, I would tell you I don't want any beams of light. I don't want any external effects to engines, radios, radiators, heat, burns, little green men, gray people, telepathic contact, missing time, nightmares, anything that screws with my nice, ordinary life. Now, I couldn't have told you that, but if I'm thinking about a UFO encounter, those are the things that make me go, ew. All right. Now, this is a friend of mine is an artist. I had her drive out to the location. Very briefly, I'm driving home. It's 2:30 in the afternoon. This is what I see. I see it from actually 4 perspectives. I drove right up to it. It's beige. Listen to the intersections, please. It's beige. It's 70 feet up. Duh. I'm always looking at 70 feet. There's no way in God's green earth I can miss anything at 70 feet because you don't understand it. I am always looking at the 70 feet. Even when I'm driving, I'm constantly scanning for ham antennas. It's 20 feet across. Same size as a 20-meter beam, what I use. It's seen from 4 sides, which I needed, at least 2 for perspective. It held still in a brisk wind. I've got brisk wind. It's not a brisk wind. It's a buffeting. I was on the highway. It had blown a truck off to the side, was how strong the winds were. These are scrub trees. Now, Sue drew this picture in summer. This was in winter. None of that was even there. They were just scrub trees, and they're going like this in the wind, buffeting in the wind. That thing is holding perfectly still. There's no propulsion paraphernalia. It's seen in broad daylight. I saw it for 20 minutes. I parked. I moved my car back and forth, turned the car off. There was no external effects on the car radio, no ray beams or weird feelings, no little gray men or green men. There was no radiation burns, no exchange of pancakes for water, which is a famous Wisconsin story, those of you that are familiar with it. There was no lost time or no nightmares. It was just a simple expression of physical laws being stretched to the edges for my benefit. And I could tell you a story later about who or whatever, that I couldn't find anybody else around there. And it was one more subjective experience that becomes a part of mass consciousness. I was there for 20 minutes. That object did not move. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I've never experienced anything like it. It was totally non-threatening, completely non-threatening. It was 100%, as far as I could tell from a vision. My perspective from it was that it was 100% physical. I was about 100 and, if you were to measure the diagonal, the Pythagorean diagonal there, it was probably 150 feet away. It was about 70 feet in the air. And I was able to drive just about right under it. This is the actual house that it was above. I don't have the little pointer here. It was over on this side. The house was over here. And Susie didn't get that one. She was thinking this one, I guess, when she drew the picture. So there's another house right here. And this was almost directly over it. And there's another driveway just off the picture here. And that's where that was. I watched it for 20 minutes, saw it from different perspectives, clear day, broad daylight, and enough perspective of the trees, the height, everything, for me to see it 100% without question that that was a UFO. And I've got many other experiences, but that was just the two. My whole intent was to show you the connection between subjective experience, intersections within yourself of all of your intents, your desires, your interests, and how they create seamlessly the external reality, and how when we're at the edge of physicality, it does create things that cannot be explained in normal, conventional, prosaic, framework of the ages time ways. It requires stepping outside the norm, or at least accepting that there's something outside the norm to explain it. Any questions? Okay, I'll tell you this real quick. I was desperately wanting someone else to see it. This is a side road. This is an access road by the highway with a main road. Well, it's not a main road, but a road going across the highway. There's a whole bunch of fascinating sequelae to this incident. But anyway, did anyone see it? Two guys came up on this side access road, frontage road it's called, a frontage road, came up. And I thought, great, I've got a couple of witnesses. Has everyone here seen Deliverance? Yeah, that's right. The two guys in that truck would have scared the crap out of the two guys in Deliverance in the woods. They would have been out of place in the backwoods of Kentucky. They were 100% out of place in Beloit. Now, Beloit is not a sophisticated community like, say, Chicago or New York, but it is a city. It's a small city. These guys were completely and them and their four teeth were completely and totally out of place. There is no way in God's green earth you could pay me to have said, excuse me, I'm Dr. Collins. Do you see that UFO up there? I went around to the Ford dealership, which is about 3/4 of a mile. Remember, I saw this from all the way around. This is a field. The Ford dealership is about, I don't know, Joe, half a mile. No, not a half a mile. Quarter mile? Quarter mile. Quarter mile away. I went there to look for people. By the way, I found this is a common thing in UFO experiences. A lot of times they are individual experiences, and you don't find anybody else. I went there looking for people. I half didn't want to. Again, I'm known in the community. I don't know that everybody at Ford would know who I am, but I am known, and I just didn't want to point and say, do you see that UFO? Because I know in my heart, although I know it is there and I know that it's 100% real, I just know it's going to pick that moment to go, ha ha. So there was a part of me that didn't want them to be there. That is true. But I did look for verification. I asked people that I know. Actually, my office staff, I think all of them went. I think I had 1999, I had 10 people. I don't know if all 10 of them went. I know a number of them went. I don't normally talk about UFOs to my staff, but I believe that most of them went, maybe all of them went. I think they took 2 or 3 cars the next day to go out there and look around. Susie she was an ex-employee of mine. The artist that did this, she's a patient. I've known her for 30 years. And she teaches art now, but she went out there and at that time and kind of made a quick sketch of it and did that painting for me. Can I go to the next slide, please? I want to go to the very end. Can I go to the end? That's what MUFON wanted. Oh, that's some photo stuff. That's me working on an antenna. MUFON wanted me to describe it in terms of a quarter in the sky. I said, give me a break. I know what 70 feet is. I know what 20 feet is. Well, is it a quarter? How many people here walk around with a quarter? Yep, that's what it looks like. Again, subjectivity is not valid. They want something objective, a quarter, and they want it at whatever my arm's length is. All right, that's me on antennas. That's one of my new keys. Let's go. I want to get to the end. These are my grandkids. All right, let's get right to the end. That's Carol and I. That was last Halloween, I think. That's another one. See that plane? I have 3 towers in the backyard, and I think that they do the gypsy moth thing, you know. The spraying for gypsy moths, I don't know if they do that anywhere else, but I think they use my house because whenever they do the gypsy moths, I constantly hear the planes going back and forth. And one day I figured it out. It's because I've got these 3 huge silver trees in the yard that serve as a spot, and I think they crisscross using my yard. Now that's not a touched photo. That plane is just above. That's an optical illusion, but he is right at probably about 100 feet. He's got to be over that because my tower's over 100. So this tower is up to 120 something feet. It goes higher than you can see there. But those planes crisscross my yard when they spray for gypsy moths. I think that's every 3 years or whatever it is. Next one. Oh, this is, I was going to get into about how they're using, oh, God, science is just really tweaking weird. This is about déjà vu in mice. Jesus, I don't want to get into this. Let's go, next one. Okay, here we are. Let's go through the next slides. Here's what we think of as a map. Here's another view. Let's go to the next one. Another view of the world, another view of the world, another view of the world. That's an interesting one, isn't that? Ever wonder why we have so many things that, north is up? Maps always, okay. Again, that's another view, that's a globe, and that's what it's trying to picture, at least visually. So, again, that was going to be a little thing about how just because we make a framework and a map and a design doesn't mean that it really shows the actual picture. I'm sure I'm way past time. Are there actually any questions? Oh, I have 10 minutes?
Well, 7.
7, all right. Does everybody understand the UFO story? I didn't, there's a billion things that go through the personal life. I was trying to show how my own interests were completely satisfied by the universe in showing me that UFO. My fears were allayed. I didn't have any missing time. I didn't have anything weird that would make me go, oh, God, I don't want to be here. It let me stay there long enough. Okay. It let me stay there long enough. It let me stay there long enough to clearly examine it. My eyes aren't the best. I need to have a moment to check on it. If it would have been a bright light in the sky, even if it had been as unusual from my point of view, I never would have been able to swear that it was an absolutely unexplained phenomena, because I don't know what the light in the sky would mean. If it was something just like I saw, but it was there for a minute or 30 seconds, or if I had seen it from only one perspective, I could never have said, yes, that was an unusual phenomena that I cannot explain, unquestionably. No, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd always have that little doubt. If it had, just for the sake of argument, landing lights, I would have questioned that it was anything other than a very terrestrial object that had some kind of natural explanation. Now, I'm aware of the things they're talking about now, the probes and so on that have anti-gravity and all that. I don't care what the framework one explanation is or isn't. To me, that was a 100% unquestioned, undoubtable, strange, unexplained by conventional understanding of science as we see the world today event. And it was my higher self telling me, hey, weird is out there. Yes, you had a question. I thought, yes.
You were talking about the shift and the inner codes.
Yes.
When the shift, you were talking earlier about with Galileo and that.
Yes,
and then
yes.
You had
that was 600 years ago,
right.
over a period of 200-300 years.
Okay,
yes.
well, you had then the kind of Inquisition, those that didn't want to go with the new shift. Are you thinking that as things move into looking at science differently, there will be a backlash? Or
There is a backlash. Oh, there is. I didn't want to get into that whole thing because that's a whole different talk. There's been books written on the new Inquisition, yes, and scientists feel it. I know that we have some people here that are introducing through very careful, controlled means, let's just call it non-standard information. But yes, there's very definite backlash. I'm sure it's felt in the scientific community very harshly. Just simply going slightly askew of the popular movement. An interesting book is The Body Electric. Dr. Is it Becker, I think it was? It was a fascinating book. And how he tried to just simply introduce the aspect of healing of bone fractures. He was an orthopedic surgeon working for the government. and how not only did he lose his funding when he started talking about electricity, he had spent 20 years examining frog legs before he could even get anything introduced. And then all of his stuff was shot down, but now they're using it. Now they're using electric current to heal bone and so on. But the point is that the establishment has tremendous resistance to change. Just simply listen to Cisco. Listen to Michael Shermer talk, from Syscop. Or Amazing. What's Amazing last name? Randy. There's ridicule, there's criticism, there's everything, and that is a form of backlash. There's other things, and I was going to get into everything from smoking laws to all kinds of other death throes of science. But yes, there is a backlash, and I don't know that we need to worry about it. I don't know that's anything to be concerned with. It's just that that's a normal process as things change. What I have no idea of is whether or not there's going to be over a period of time, a tweaking of science that will lead to a paradigm shift in science, or whether or not it's going to be what I would call a grassroots movement, a collective consciousness that will result in physical change that will essentially lead to a transformation or some other version. The only thing I know is that December 2012, right? Isn't that when the Mayan calendar? The only thing I realized this last year is that's my first Social Security check. That's one system I don't want to collapse on that date anyway. Just one damn check. Yes.
Oh, thank you. You say you're a ham radio operator.
Yes.
And I'm curious what kind of information you're transmitting. What kind of information you're transmitting?
Nothing esoteric or weird.
What?
Ham radio, what I do is conversations with other hams using Morse code, high-speed Morse code. I use very high speed. It's music to me. It's music to many people around the world. We love it. I actually had a commercial license, still do, I guess, unless the FCC cancels it, I guess they might, for a shipboard operation back when I think I got my first shipboard license when I was 16. I never operated ships. I don't like water. It's in glass, it's okay. But I wanted the commercial license. So I have a commercial telegraph license. I've got the highest class ham license. Now they've watered those down. They've made it easier over the years. But at the time, I went through the 5 classes of license, and they were very, very involved. A lot of math, a lot of work, a lot of effort. I took the 5 licenses over a 8-year period. It was a rough hole to go through. It was something. But what I enjoy in the hobby, primarily my bend, there's all kinds. There's satellite communications. There's all kinds of things. Conversations. It's for people that love the art of radio, that love the magic of radio. Think of it as fishing. You're out there. You're kind of dealing with nature. Well, we're dealing with the ionosphere. It's just a magic way of communicating with people. And no, we don't get into esoteric conversations or anything. Morse code conversations are just about almost anything, from the weather to your hobby, your other interests, your profession, or whatever. But it's using the Morse code that's the magic for me.
I was curious to hear you talk about Morse code, because I was thinking of it last month, and I thought, is there still a practical application for it?
I don't know anymore. That's a whole different debate that's gone on for years. The government has stopped using it. International shipping has stopped using it about 6 years ago. The primary users of Morse code today are the ham operators like me that operate on what's called HF, that keep the art alive, yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Time for one last question.
Yes.
I was just wondering, did you see the object disappear or go away?
No, I did not. And I don't have any regrets about anything in my life. But if I had to think, gee, would I do it differently? That's one that I might do. On the other hand, I think it contains a magic for me that might have been lost if I would have been involved in trying to make sense. I've been interested in propulsion systems. I've done a lot of reading. In fact, I've got a whole story about how I had dreams UFO dreams, whatever you want to call them, and learning about propulsion systems, and then reading about them, that some engineer had discovered what he thinks is an explanation for the observable phenomena 15 years later. Freaked me out, you know? Like the thing with the closet and the coat the other day. So I don't want to get into that, but no, I think the magic was contained. Yes?
Frank, did you see that article this past week where the world standard for mass is actually is reducing? The world standard for mass is 1 kilogram. The actual part that they have in a sealed container is
changed.
no longer 1 kilogram.
No. Part of the 13 mysteries I put up there were the changing of standards. Some of the things. There's a lot of things that we're learning. There's a lot of things that are changing. No, I did. To answer your question, no, I did not, and I'll be interested in seeing that. But we are just at the edges where we're tripping over our experiences can no longer be contained within either conventional science or what has filtered down as quantum understanding. I'm not questioning any of that. I'm saying that what has filtered down has not contained, does not allow for the containing of the explanations of the range of experiences that we are now experiencing because our value fulfillment can no longer be fulfilled within the current systems. Yes? Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed that.